On a chilly Los Angeles night, a light drizzle misted the streets, the neon glow of a small gas station reflecting off the wet pavement. The world moved at its usual hurried pace, but for one person, this wasn't just another night. It was survival. Anna, 7 months pregnant, moved tirelessly between the fuel pumps, her thin jacket barely shielding her from the cold. Her hands, rough from long hours of work, wiped windshields with practiced efficiency. She offered polite smiles to customers too rushed to notice her exhaustion. Rent was due, groceries were running low, and every dollar earned tonight mattered. Under the station's awning, a little girl sat on a plastic chair, her small fingers wrapped around a worn red pencil. 8-year-old Daisy was deeply focused on her drawing, her tiny collection of colored stubs, blue, yellow, and red, lined up beside her. Each stroke on the paper was careful, deliberate, as if she were bringing something important to life. Then, the deep, steady hum of a motorcycle interrupted the night's rhythm. A sleek black bike pulled into the station, its rider moving with an effortless grace as he dismounted. Keanu Reeves, dressed in a leather jacket and dark jeans, removed his helmet, shaking out damp strands of hair. He had stopped for gas, nothing more, but the moment his eyes landed on Anna and her daughter, something made him pause. His gaze followed Anna as she hurried between cars, her movements precise but weary. Then his attention drifted to Daisy, completely lost in her sketch. Curious, Keanu took a step closer. "You like to draw?" he asked gently. Daisy, startled by the unexpected voice, glanced up at him. She hesitated, then gave a small nod. "I draw places," she said quietly. "Places I want to go." Keanu's eyes softened. He looked down at her paper, a carefully drawn scene of a kitchen, a steaming pot on the stove, a table in the center. But one part of the picture remained unfinished, a counter with a blank sign above it. Intrigued, he pointed. "What's this place?" Daisy squeezed her red pencil, as if trying to decide whether to answer. Before she could speak, Anna's voice cut in. "Daisy, don't bother the gentleman," she said, wiping her hands on her apron. Keanu smiled. "She's not bothering me. I was just admiring her artwork." Anna gave him a cautious glance, but before she could reply, a car honked impatiently at the next pump. "Excuse me," she said, hurrying off. Keanu watched as she went back to work, but his thoughts remained on the sketch in Daisy's lap. Something about it felt unfinished, like a story waiting to be told. Anna finished her last windshield of the night, but her steps had slowed. Every movement sent a dull ache radiating through her lower back. She tried to ignore it, forcing a smile at the last customer before leaning against a pump for support. A few feet away, Daisy watched her mother with concern. "Are you okay, Mama?" Anna forced a smile. "I'm fine, sweetheart. Just a little tired." Keanu, still watching, finally stepped forward. His voice was calm but firm. "Excuse me," he said. "Do you need help? You look exhausted." Anna looked at him, surprised. Her instinct was to brush it off. "Thank you, but I'm fine. Just some back pain, it's normal." Keanu shook his head slightly. Normal shouldn't mean suffering. And at that moment, something in his tone made Anna hesitate. She had spent so long carrying burdens alone that the idea of kindness, of someone truly seeing her struggle, felt almost unfamiliar. And she had no idea just how much this stranger was about to change her life. Keanu's voice carried a warmth that made Anna pause. She shook her head, staring at the damp pavement beneath her feet. "There's not much to be done," she murmured. "It's just life." Keanu didn't push further, but his eyes caught the way she instinctively pressed a hand against her lower back as she eased into the plastic chair. He crouched slightly, keeping a respectful distance. "Do you do this every night?" Anna nodded, keeping her gaze fixed on the horizon instead of him. "2 nights a week here, and in the mornings, I clean offices. It's what pays the rent and keeps Daisy in school." Keanu was silent for a moment, processing the weight of her words. "And when do you rest?" he asked softly. A quiet, humorless laugh escaped Anna's lips. "Rest?" She shook her head. "I don't really have time for that. Bills don't wait. And with the baby coming, I need to work even more." She took a breath. "There's no choice." Keanu frowned slightly. It shouldn't have to be this way. For the first time, Anna looked directly at him. Her eyes were tired, so deeply tired, but steady. But it is. At least for me. I made choices that brought me here, and I can't complain. She exhaled. Complaining doesn't help Daisy. A small hand slipped over Anna's, soft fingers wrapping around her tired ones. You do everything for me, Mama, Daisy said gently. Anna's expression softened, but her eyes glistened with unshed tears. She squeezed Daisy's hand. Because you're all that matters, sophomore. You're the reason I keep going. Keanu watched the quiet exchange, something tightening in his chest. This woman wasn't just carrying the weight of pregnancy and long work hours. She was carrying the emotional weight of making sure Daisy never felt the depth of their struggles. Anna's voice was barely above a whisper. Sometimes I wonder if I'm doing enough. If one day she'll look back and think I just fought. That I never really lived. That I never gave her something beautiful. Daisy gripped her mother's hand tighter. You give me everything, Mama. Anna smiled at her daughter's innocence, but Keanu noticed the fleeting shadow in her eyes. Something deeper left unspoken. What about her father? Keanu asked gently. Anna froze for a second. When she finally spoke, her voice was even, but there was an edge of pain beneath it. He left when he found out I was pregnant again. Keanu felt something twist inside him. Anna let out a breath. He said he didn't want another responsibility. That it was already hard enough with one child. Her lips pressed together before she continued. So, he packed his things and left. Daisy looked up at her mother with quiet understanding, but she didn't say anything. Anna squeezed her daughter's hand, as if trying to reassure her. And you? Keanu asked softly. What did you do after that? Anna straightened her shoulders, the movement almost rehearsed. I kept going. Her voice was firm, final. Because I didn't have a choice. The sharp blare of a car horn from pump 2 interrupted them. Anna immediately stood, her exhaustion masked once again. Excuse me, sir, she said, forcing a polite smile. Duty calls. Keanu remained still as she walked away, but this time, he noticed the slight limp in her right foot. The weight of her pregnancy was taking a toll on her body, and yet she pushed forward as if stopping wasn't an option. He turned back to Daisy, who had returned to her seat, gripping her red pencil once more. She pressed it against the paper, her small fingers tight around it. Your mom works a lot, Keanu said gently, crouching to be closer to her level. Daisy nodded, still focused on her drawing. She cries sometimes, she said quietly, when she thinks I'm asleep. Keanu felt a pang in his chest. Why? Daisy hesitated before answering. Because she's tired, she whispered, and because, like Mama said, Papa left when he found out about the baby. She pressed the red pencil harder against the page. He said he didn't want another mouth to feed. Keanu didn't respond immediately. The weight of Daisy's words settled in his chest. He looked over at Anna, watching her work, her movements slower than before but still determined. At that moment, he knew. He had to do something. He didn't have all the answers yet, but one thing was certain, what he was about to do would change everything for them. The drizzle thickened, making the air colder. Anna shivered slightly, adjusting her thin jacket. Daisy, sitting beside her, continued drawing but kept glancing up at her mother, as if sensing the invisible weight she carried. Keanu stepped forward. His voice was calm but certain. I'd like to ask you something. Anna looked up, slightly surprised, but gestured for him to continue. If you could have one chance, just one, to do something different, what would it be? Anna hesitated. The question seemed simple, but the answer carried immense weight. She lowered her gaze to the wet ground, lost in thought. Anna exhaled, gripping the flyer between her fingers. It felt foreign in her hands, like something that didn't belong to her world. A world built on exhaustion, sacrifice, and making do with what little she had. I don't know, she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. I don't think I can afford to think like that anymore. There's no room for woofs when you have bills to pay and children to raise. Keanu nodded, his gaze steady. I imagine you've had to give up a lot because of that. Giving up? Anna shook her head. That's not the right word. It's more like, she hesitated, searching for the right way to explain it. Life just doesn't allow certain things. You can't dream when you're barely making rent. Daisy lifted her eyes from her drawing, her small voice cutting through the heaviness in the air. But you still cook, Mama, and you make the best lasagna in the world. Anna let out a soft chuckle, though there was a trace of sadness in it. Making lasagna at home and running a restaurant are two very different things, sweetheart. But you've wanted a restaurant, haven't you? Keanu asked, watching her closely. She didn't answer right away. For a moment, she simply stared at the flyer, her fingers running absently over its edges. Then, in a low voice, she admitted, yes. When I was younger, before all of this. She paused. Before Marco. Keanu caught the shift in her tone, the weight in her voice as she said the name. Your husband? Anna nodded, her gaze fixed on the horizon. When we got married, we dreamed of opening a restaurant together. He used to say I had a gift, that my love for food was special. But after Daisy was born, things changed. It got harder. And when I found out I was pregnant again, he left. Daisy squeezed her mother's hand, offering silent comfort. Anna swallowed hard before continuing. He said he couldn't handle another burden, that he didn't want another responsibility. Her voice wavered, but she forced herself to keep going. And then he just walked away. Keanu clenched his jaw, feeling an unexpected knot form in his chest. He glanced at Daisy, still quietly drawing, then back at Anna, at the way she held herself together even when she was clearly breaking inside. After a moment, he straightened up, his expression unreadable. Maybe you feel like you don't have any choices right now. But what if you had help? What if there was a way to change that? Anna frowned, skepticism creeping into her tired eyes. I appreciate it, but I don't need charity. I'm fine. I'm not talking about charity, Keanu said firmly, his voice gentle but unwavering. I'm talking about an opportunity. Something that could help you dream again. She shook her head, struggling with his words. Why do you care? I'm nobody important. Keanu met her gaze without hesitation. Because everyone deserves the chance to dream. His tone softened, but the determination in his voice didn't waver. And because you deserve more than just surviving. Anna stared at him, unsure of how to respond. I'll be back tomorrow, Keanu said simply. Why? He gestured subtly toward Daisy's notebook and the dimly lit station around them. Because I think you deserve more than this. And with that, he turned, heading toward his motorcycle. Anna stood frozen, watching as he mounted the bike and rode away. She didn't know what to make of his promise to return. But what he would bring the next day was something she could never have imagined. The next morning, as Anna finished her shift at the gas station, she heard the familiar deep rumble of a motorcycle engine. She knew it wasn't a coincidence. Beside her, Daisy paused in her drawing, looking toward the sound with curiosity. Keanu parked at the same pump as the night before, stepping off his bike with an easy smile. In his hands, he carried 2 large paper bags, his movements calm yet purposeful, like someone who knew exactly what he was doing. Good morning, he greeted as he approached. Anna folded her arms, still wary. You actually came back. I said I would, Keanu replied simply. He placed the bags on the counter before turning to Daisy. Good morning, Daisy. Good morning. Daisy chirped, her eyes instantly drawn to the bags. Keanu turned back to Anna, noticing the way she held herself, tense, guarded. Before you say anything, he said, just look inside. Reluctantly, Anna peeked into the bags. Inside were basic groceries, a few new clothes for Daisy, and on top, neatly placed, a pristine box of brand new colored pencils. Daisy gasped, her small hands reaching for them instantly. Pencils, she exclaimed, clutching the box to her chest as if it were the most precious thing in the world. Thank you, mister. Anna's gaze lingered on the contents of the bag, her expression unreadable. She opened her mouth to speak, but before she could, Keanu cut in gently. I know what you're thinking, he said, but this isn't charity. It's just a little push, a chance to help you breathe easier. Anna shook her head, trying to steady herself. I don't know if I can accept this. Keanu placed an envelope on the counter. This is for rent, just for this month. He hesitated, then reached into his pocket and pulled out a slightly crumpled flyer. And there's one more thing. Anna took the flyer, scanning the words carefully. Her breath caught in her throat. What is this? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. It's a free cooking course, Keanu explained. It covers professional techniques and even helps with the business side of things. Just in case you ever want to turn this into something bigger. Anna stared at the flyer, her fingers trembling slightly. Then she looked back at him, still struggling to process it all. Why are you doing this? Her voice was laced with disbelief. You don't even know us. Keanu offered a small smile. Because you deserve it. His expression was steady, sincere. And because sometimes, one act of kindness can change everything. Anna took a deep breath, trying to fight back the lump in her throat. I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything right now, Keanu said. Just think about it. And know that someone believes in you. Daisy, still holding the pencils tightly, looked at the flyer in her mother's hands. Mama, will you learn new recipes? Like the ones Grandma used to make? Anna looked at her daughter, then back at the flyer. For the first time in a long time, something inside her shifted. A small space for hope. However faint, Anna held the flyer, glancing at Daisy and then back at Keanu, still hesitant but with a newfound spark in her eyes. She whispered, maybe it's time to try. Little did she know, what Keanu planned next would be even more transformative. Months had passed since that morning. The culinary course Anna had joined didn't just refine her cooking skills, it unlocked doors she'd never imagined. With each class, she rediscovered her passion for food and, more importantly, its power to bring people together. Keanu kept his promise. During that time, he worked quietly on something bigger. While Anna learned, he gathered contacts, sought support, and found the perfect little space in the neighborhood. It was simple yet inviting, the ideal spot for what was to come. On a special morning, Anna and Daisy arrived at the location, unsure of what awaited them. Keanu stood there, wearing his familiar, calm smile, waiting by the building's entrance. What is this? Anna asked, her eyes scanning the storefront. Keanu stepped aside, revealing a sign above the door. The elegant lettering read, La Cena Diana. Anna froze, shock written across her face. She brought a hand to her mouth, trying to contain her emotions as tears quietly rolled down her cheeks. Daisy clung to her mother's arm, her eyes sparkling with excitement. It's your restaurant, Mama? Daisy exclaimed, tugging her toward the door. Anna turned to Keanu, disbelief etched into her expression. You did this? Why? Keanu smiled, though his tone was serious. Because you deserve it. Because your story and your talent are special and the world needs to see them. And because no one should have to give up on their dreams. They entered together. The inside of the restaurant was simple but had everything Anna needed to start. A functional kitchen, neatly arranged tables, and thoughtful details reminiscent of her grandmother's restaurant in Italy. Daisy ran to a corner with a small table set up for children to draw, equipped with the pencils Keanu had given her months ago. Anna ran her fingers across the surfaces, still trying to grasp the reality of it all. She turned to Keanu, searching for the right words. I don't know how to thank you for this. You don't have to thank me, he said softly. Just do what you do best. Cook, bring people together, and pass this kindness forward when you can. The grand opening happened days later, and the restaurant quickly became a cherished gathering spot in the community. Anna crafted dishes that told stories, each inspired by her grandmother's recipes but with her own creative twist. The food was incredible, but what truly made the place special was the heart Anna poured into every detail. On the night of the opening, Daisy sat at a table, proudly handing out menus she had designed herself. Anna was in the kitchen, preparing a lasagna while the restaurant buzzed with laughter and conversation. Keanu sat at a quiet table in the corner, observing it all. When Anna brought a lasagna to his table, she sat down for a moment, smiling. I never imagined I'd be here, she said, her voice filled with gratitude. Keanu glanced around. but you deserve to be. What you've created here, it's something everyone needs to experience." As Anna looked around the bustling restaurant, she realized her dream had come back to life. But the true transformation wasn't just in her own life. The ripple effect of that one act of kindness on her community was only beginning. The aroma of freshly prepared meals filled the air, wrapping the small restaurant in a warm embrace. Anna carefully arranged each dish with the passion and care she had always carried within her. The tables of La Cena Diana were occupied by smiling customers, sharing laughter and heartfelt conversations. It had become more than just a place to eat. It was a space of connection, of shared stories, and of community. Daisy, with her ever-present colored pencils in hand, moved between the tables, handing out menus she had drawn herself. She loved talking about the restaurant, proudly sharing that it was inspired by her grandmother's cherished recipes. Keanu sat at his usual table, quiet yet unmistakably present, watching with a satisfied smile. He knew the transformation he was witnessing ran deeper than the bustling room around him. Anna approached him with a cup of coffee. "You always sit at the same table," she remarked playfully. Keanu smiled. "It's the best spot in the house. I can see everything." Anna took a seat across from him, her gaze sweeping the restaurant. "I never could have imagined this. Not a day goes by that I don't thank you for what you've done for me and Daisy. You changed everything." Keanu shook his head gently. "You changed everything. I just gave you a little push." She smiled back, but her expression grew serious. "I'll never forget what you've done for us. And I'll make sure to pay it forward." Keanu nodded. "That's all I could ever ask. Kindness is a cycle. Now you have the chance to be that change for someone else." At that moment, Daisy appeared at the table, holding her sketchbook. "Mama, look what I drew." Anna took the sketchbook and chuckled softly. It was a drawing of the restaurant, now complete with customers, steaming plates of food, and a large sign outside that read in bold letters, La Cena Diana. "It's perfect," Anna said, pulling Daisy into a hug. Keanu stood, leaving a few bills on the table. "I think it's time for me to go." Anna looked at him, surprised. "But you're part of this." "I always will be," he replied. "But this place is yours now. It's time for you to keep writing this story." He gave Daisy a warm smile before heading to the door, leaving Anna deeply moved. As she watched Keanu walk away, she realized her life had not just changed, it had transformed. And now, she was ready to be the catalyst for someone else's transformation. What she would do next would become the next chapter in her story, a story of courage, determination, and the profound power of kindness. The message I hope to share through this story is simple yet powerful. Never stop dreaming. Dreams are the flame that keeps hope alive within us. Even in the hardest moments, they give us purpose, direction, and something to fight for. And alongside dreams, kindness becomes the thread that connects us, a quiet force that transforms lives by reminding us that no one is ever truly alone. Dreams and kindness have the power to change the world, not in grand, immediate gestures, but one life at a time, one act at a time. So believe in them, nurture them, and pass them on. Because that's how we build a more beautiful future for us all. If this story touched your heart, we invite you to explore more stories of hope, compassion, and resilience.